All right. Well, this is being recorded, so we will be sharing this after the talk as well. So anybody that joins late will be able to see that as well. I just want to welcome everybody that's joined so far and say thank you so much for being here. Um, we are Dr. Ben and Kristy. We are co-founders of Onus IV Therapy and Longevity. And thanks so much for joining us today. We were just going to talk a little bit about our journey, where we started and where we're headed, the potential for joining us as an investor and participating in some of that growth and potential wealth building, we hope. So, Dr. Ben, windburnt and sunburnt down there in Baja. Share a little bit with us, like why you started Onus and your background. What motivated you to help get this thing off the ground?
Yeah, so by way of training, I'm a board certified emergency physician. Went to medical school at Michigan State and then did residency in EM at Bay State Medical Center Tufts in Massachusetts, but had lived in Colorado for many years before doing my medical training. And when I graduated back in 2014, that's the first place I wanted to get back to was Denver. And at that time, in 2014, I had always given thought to this concept of IV hydration, but there really wasn't anything in place in Colorado. And so, forces that be brought us together, you, Kristy, and our other business partner, Chaz. And I said, hey, if you guys are looking for a medical director, I'm your guy, because I've always been fascinated by this concept of just wellness and longevity. And, fast forward to 10 years, and after several build outs and brick and mortar locations, we're soon about to open our seventh location here on the Front Range. And I think, as far as my involvement in this company, looking back at medical school, I can't recall any formal training that I ever had as far as any nutrition. And I actually just looked it up prior to this talk to see if there was any federally mandated requirement for nutrition in medical school. And there really isn't. They do recommend a minimum of 20 hours, but it really is up to the medical school's discretion as far as training specifically in the realm of nutrition. And I can't recall a single lecture where maybe we went into some various vitamin deficiencies, but it was pretty brief and a very cursory overview. And I think it is really neglected, generally speaking, at least in the US, as far as any formal training in nutrition. And so I mentioned that because conventional medicine is really more reactive, right? If you have acute appendicitis, well, you're going to need a general surgeon probably to take out your appendix to fix the problem. And I think in the realm of IV nutrition and alternative medicine, which is very much what we're involved in at Onus, it really is proactive and preventative. And I think that, the old adage is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure is really appropriate in that context. And what we've discovered over the last 10 years has been life changing for a lot of people. I mean, it's anecdotally, we have folks coming through who say they've had chronic brain fog and fatigue, and this has been going on the majority of their adult lives. And they come in and get a few treatments of NAD infusions, and they tell us this is the first time they felt like themselves in 20 years. And thank you so much for getting their life back. It's pretty profound stuff that we're doing. It's very cutting edge. It's thrilling to be a part of. And I do think there's a major shift as far as people taking control of their health. In the realm of longevity, really just trying to not live longer, but living better longer. It's we can focus on prevention and prevention of disease, but I think that's a little bit short-sighted when in reality the focus really should be optimization. So living a longer life, but a much healthier life, and a life that is absent of disease and illness. In the ER, I see countless numbers of patients who are my age, in the mid 40s, who are on multiple medications and have chronic diseases. And I think if there's a way to prevent those chronic illnesses from occurring, I think people would just be much happier as a whole. So that's kind of my involvement and background in this industry. And Yeah, I think it's been quite a road and one that I'm thrilled to be a part of for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're thrilled that you're here. It wouldn't be the same without you. My background, I'm Kristy Anderson, one of the other co-founders, and my background is in medical device and pharmaceutical sales. Also a serial entrepreneur, I guess, because I started a mountain bike company as well. So definitely always interested in founding new concepts and bringing new ideas to the forefront. And then our third partner Chaz comes from an advertising agency and marketing background. So I think the three of us represent a really nice triangle of medical, business and sales, and then marketing and branding. So that's kind of why the partnerships worked out so beautifully well. Um, and I first heard about this concept in the reactive sense to touch on what Ben was talking about. A friend of mine was creating like a hangover heaven bus, if you will, in San Diego. And she was at the same device company as I was. This is back in the summer of 2014. And I said to her, would you be offended if I tried to start this concept in Colorado? And she's like, no, go for it. But really, looking at Colorado as a state, we're such an active and adventurous group of people. And I felt the right tone to take with this would be the more proactive approach. And we've built upon that now with adding these longevity services with that same mindset of proactive wellness. And just to touch a little bit about the journey, so I heard about it in 2014, and then 2015, by then we'd formed the partnership, and we didn't have much capital to start. We literally just had enough to outfit a Sprinter van. Ben, do you remember the name of our first Sprinter van?
I believe it was called Large Marge.
Large Marge, she's large and in charge. And then after that we had Go Van Go. But literally it was a van we parked down by the Platte River, so our van down by the river. And it's grown with the help of so many people. We had a brick and mortar that fall in 2015, our first at Denver Sports Recovery, just a tiny little footprint. And then our angel investor Rhonda came on board in 2017, which enabled us to grow stores number 2 and 3. And since then, it's been organic. We haven't taken on any other outside investment. It's just grown organically, adding stores. So now we're at 6 corporate locations. And of course, with our franchisee opening up in Fort Collins, he'll be our first franchise location come Q1 of 2025. And the timing is right for us to bring in investors, and we wanted to open it up to employees, friends, and family. My past experience with the mountain bike company unfortunately went very far south because private equity, if you take their capital, oftentimes it comes with control of the company. It ended up just running it into the ground. So we thought it would be a much better approach to involve the people that are passionate about wellness, that are loyal clients, our friends, family, who have supported all along and believe in this and utilize it for themselves too, with the opportunity for them to make some money as well. Before I dive into specific numbers, Ben, let's touch upon some of the other services we're offering now. I'm going to talk about what it means for revenue and what it means for growth, a potential exit, and what investors can potentially make. But from a medical perspective, really we focus on money second at Onus. I think if you do the right thing, do the right thing for your people, do the right thing for your customer to help them, the money will follow. It's never been the primary focus. So in adding these longevity services, Ben, touch upon hormone health. Why would we add hormone health lab testing in your perspective from a medical director?
Sure, and just to kind of touch on some history, it's only really been until recently till we've really broadened our scope as far as the services that we offer. Our original title of our company was Onus IV Hydration. And until recently, we didn't really, we actually just changed our name to Therapy and Longevity, specifically because I think IV hydration, specifically as far as vitamin hydration and infusions, is somewhat is very helpful. It's very effective, but it can be somewhat narrow in its approach when there's so many other potential treatment modalities that can be complementary to the IV therapy. And so you mentioned BHRT, or biologic hormone replacement therapy. This is something we brought on board within the last year. This is a biologic hormone replacement, so it mimics the actual endogenous hormones in our bodies, in contrast to synthetic hormones, which comes with a whole slew of side effects. There's a lot of people out there when you get into your 40s, 50s, both men and women, who may be profoundly deficient in various hormone levels. Specifically, men, it's often testosterone, and women, as they're going through perimenopause, it's often estrogen and progesterone. There can be supplements for these. And we've actually brought on a rock star nurse practitioner by the name of Kelly Cordy, who is leading our charge in this BHRT arena. She actually does pellet insertion. And for those who aren't aware, I won't get into a lot of the details, but basically it's use a small trocar and injects just below the surface of the skin in the soft tissue and fat in the flank area, minimally invasive, very little pain. And these pellets that are inserted will slowly absorb within the systemic circulation over about 4 to 6 months. And it does depend on the individual how frequently those insertion procedures need to be performed, but that's typically the time frame. In addition to hormone replacement, it is of vital importance that we're checking routine lab tests. And so this has now incorporated us to do serial lab panels, not just in the realm of hormone therapy, where we're checking obviously hormone levels and hemoglobin, hematocrit, and various other levels that are important, liver tests, et cetera, but also allowing us specifically to test certain vitamin levels. And so previously, when we did somewhat of a shotgun approach to vitamin therapy, now we are able to specifically tailor certain IV infusions to that individual based on potentially certain vitamin deficiencies. It's amazing how many people are going around feeling fatigued and potentially moody. They have sleep problems, they have unintentional weight gain as they're entering their midlives, not knowing that they're profoundly deficient in these hormone levels. And so this is a major step for us in bringing on other treatment options in addition to the IV therapy, specifically in the realm of hormones. So this is one treatment option that we've brought on board. We are also currently working with a specialist in the realm of peptides. And this is a whole other arena that I could spend, hours talking about. But just on a surface level, these are strings of amino acids that are basically precursors to protein synthesis. And that often injected in a subcutaneous fashion, this would be something similar to like an insulin syringe, really tiny needle. It's about this big and a really small gauge that you inject on a daily basis, depending on the peptide. But there are hundreds of peptides out there, some for inflammation, some for muscle growth, some for sleep, some for energy. I mean, you name it. This is a rapidly evolving field and one that Onus will be taking on probably within the next 6 months to a year or so, in addition to these other services. As far as other treatment modalities that we are considering and investigating, there's hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which is basically the equivalent of doing a deep water dive for scuba diving. And basically, high oxygen therapy in that high pressure environment is amazing at its ability of anti-inflammatories, wound healing. I mean, there's a ton of indications for that type of treatment that can also be brought on in addition to these other services that we're offering. We also have an individual who's rolling out neurofeedback, which is basically targeting various brainwave activity for a number of indications, whether it's anxiety, depression, overall mood, focus, sleep, that certain parts of the brain may potentially be either overactivated or underactivated, and people again are unaware until you get a formal brain map that subsequently can be targeted to improve brain function just as a whole. And we have a therapist who specializes specifically in the field of neurofeedback. So basically, when previously we were very focused on IV hydration, we have now incorporated this much larger treatment approach that are complementary to each other. And I think looking at a big picture, this overall industry of longevity is still very much in its infancy. And I think you're starting to see this huge momentum swing to this alternative medicine, longevity, and general wellness kind of sphere, if you will, compared to looking back 5 to 10 years ago. I mean, it was maybe talked about, but there's this big push right now that's really emphasizing and people to at least pursue this, whether it's podcasts, and there's a number of people out there who are, digging deep down some very deep rabbit holes in this arena. But I think from an investment standpoint, seeing the potential of this industry to get in at the ground level, which is very much where we are right now, knowing that this industry is about to really take off in the next 5 to 10 years, would be huge. So it's pretty exciting time at Onus. We're bringing in all these new therapies, but I do think this is the future of medicine.
Yeah, and I think that charge is being led by people like, David Sinclair out of Harvard, Dr. Peter Attia. There's just these Andrew Huberman. There's these thought leaders that are talking constantly about optimization, longevity. And that leads me to talk about a little bit with Fransmart. So Fransmart is our new franchise development partner that is going to help us grow. Traditionally, they helped restaurants, so their expertise has been with Qdoba, taking Qdoba from one unit to a huge exit with Jack in the Box when they sold it thousands of units, and then Five Guys Burgers, taking them from 5 units up to, again, over 1,000. And more recently with brands like Glow 30, a facial spa. So they've transitioned away from restaurants and more towards wellness and health and beauty because they see that as the future, as Ben mentioned. And they get many applications a day from businesses that want to work with them. And we were fortunate that I reached out, sent in an application, and heard back from their CEO in 10 minutes. And I think it's because of the excitement around this longevity focus and the potential for proactive wellness to really have a hockey stick trajectory in the next few years. And we're excited for what we can do with them. And part of that growth requires having the infrastructure in place so that we can make sure our franchisees are supported, trained, educated, that whether you walk into an Onus in Colorado or in Texas, you're getting that same stellar experience that we've always offered. Our staff are incredible. They're all ER nurses that also have a wealth of knowledge, beyond just what you'd have in traditional medical training, but with our training as well. And so in order for us to be good partners to Fransmart, it makes sense for us to have a bit of a runway of capital to create new roles in the company to build that infrastructure. And what that looks like too, in addition to the services expanding, obviously there's a requirement for other positions as well, such as a training role, and et cetera. So I want to touch a little bit just on the numbers because I know that's what people want to know, what's in it for me, and the ROI that could potentially happen. So it's pretty straightforward math. You can see that we're offering at $1 a share, and we are currently valuated at $8 million. So that's what the SEC, when they audited us, and that's what's presented on the StartEngine page. So Fransmart's projections are over the next 10 years, getting us to over 100 units, valuating it somewhere closer to 80 to 100 million. So if you want to keep the math really simple, if you were to invest $1,000 at $1 a share at 80 million, that translates to $8,000. $10,000 would translate to $80,000. So obviously there's an opportunity for micro investment. To touch upon some of the legal language, obviously there's a whole slew of that at the bottom of the StartEngine landing page, as is required. It's very boilerplate, but it can be a little intimidating. I'm not a lawyer or a doctor. I was about to say doctor. I'm not a lawyer or a doctor. But that legal language is required for us to say that, it is risky to make an investment. So we wouldn't recommend putting all your retirement savings. I think it's a great opportunity for micro investing, putting in what you're comfortable and knowing that the growth is planned. There's always that risk as well. To touch upon just what the stores currently do. So most of our stores average somewhere between 600 to 700K with an EBITDA of 20 to 30%. Our goal for adding these additional services, in addition to improving our clients' proactive wellness, is to increase our top line revenue. So some of our older stores, our longer performing stores, are closer to $1 million. Our goal is to get every location to about $1 million in revenue annually, with a 30 to 40% EBITDA, which translates to a 30 to 40% IRR for investors. I know that's a lot of numbers and legal language and abbreviations. So feel free in the chat to drop questions. We can talk a little bit more about specific numbers or areas of the growth that you'd like to discuss. Um, yeah, we want to open it up here in the last 10 minutes for your Q&A. So if anybody has anything, feel free to drop it in the chat. Let's see here, I'll open up the chat window. See if we have anything.
I think the other thing to mention that we may have touched on briefly, it's for a potential investor, the question becomes, well, why Onus and not one of these other myriad of IV companies? And I think, to answer that question, it really comes down to us running a really tight ship. We've been blazing the trail for this industry in Colorado, as we were the first IV company in the state, of which there's now probably over 50 plus, if not more. A lot of these companies are run, let's just say, under the radar. Oftentimes you can be getting an infusion, maybe not even from a nurse, but like a CNA, who doesn't really have the authority to be giving these types of treatments. There may not be any medical direction involved, and if there is, that medical director may even be out of state. Who knows if they're actually licensed within the state of Colorado. So from a medical liability standpoint, it's fraught with the potential for bad outcome. Unfortunately, I haven't heard of any major bad outcomes, at least in the state of Colorado, but there have been cases in other states that are pretty scary. And I think ultimately that mentioning that piece is obviously of the utmost importance because we pride ourselves on safety. We have a minimum of 2 years of ER or ICU level experience for all of our nursing staff. So they know and can recognize when potentially a client may be too quote unquote sick for elective IV therapy and can refer that patient to the ER if needed. We also have four medical providers, all of which who have prescriptive authority and can oversee any individual coming through the space who may require, let's say, a prescriptive type treatment, and especially as we're going into the realm of hormone therapy, analyzing lab testing, et cetera. I think a lot of these IV companies out there that would offer other potential investment opportunities are really focused on the IV piece and not incorporating all these other treatment modalities. There are a couple of companies out there, but I would beg you, if you haven't already, to walk into our space and experience the treatment and the service that you get at Onus, which is going to be very unlike any other IV company out there. It's very welcoming. We have an amazing staff, all of whom are incredibly knowledgeable. It's very comfortable. And I think that was our big push when we rolled this out, is to make sure that this should be a pleasant experience. I think there's still a major phobia of needles and starting an IV, and I totally get that. But if you can make that experience one that's pleasant and somewhat enjoyable, I think that you're more likely to come back. And if you compare that, I encourage you guys to check out some other IV places for a point of comparison. You will see what Fransmart sees in us that they don't see in other IV companies.
Yeah, to your point about needle phobia, I think that's another great reason that we've expanded our offerings. Because yeah, maybe IVs aren't for everyone, but if we can optimize your wellness through hormones or supplements or peptides, there's an opportunity for other modalities to help improve your life if IV hydration isn't your thing. So it opens up our market too. And again, from a business perspective, it expands our revenue stream. So I realized that the chat was disabled. If there's any questions, it's open up now. It's open now to everyone. I think it was just open to us as hosts before. So if you have any questions, otherwise,
And it's okay if you don't have questions now. Obviously, feel free to
reach
reach out to
out.
us directly. We're more than happy to field any questions. I think, Kristy, you have an upcoming webinar in a week or so with Fransmart. Is that right?
No,
Or
we haven't put that on the books yet. We probably
okay,
will wait till after the holidays if we do another.
okay.
And I know a lot of people were asking for this recording who couldn't make it today. So I'll be sending it out. It will be posted on our StartEngine landing page. It'll also go out in our email newsletter. So you can always reach out to us individually. I've taken a number of calls with people who are interested in the investment just to talk one-on-one. So happy to do that for anyone who's interested in learning more. Otherwise, Thanks everyone so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to share a little bit about Onus and talk about our journey with you. And we hope you'll consider joining us in this journey towards wellness. All right.
Thanks all.
Thanks
It's been
everyone.
fun.
Bye.
Take care.